Welcome back, everybody, and go blue. Pay the man his money. An Indiana preview and JJ McCarthy on Heisman Watch, all coming up next on Michigan Wolverines Live. And welcome in, everybody, to Michigan Wolverines Live. My name is John Diadamo. I'm going to be taking you through the next hour or so of content. You can always find me at John Diadamo. And I'm just going to ask you to do a couple of things for us, if you don't mind. Please like this video. If you like the content that we bring, that the voice of college football brings, it just takes a second, and it's free. Subscribe, because we are 1,000 subscribers plus below that team down south. So if you guys are happy with that, that's one thing, but I don't think you are. I think you're asking yourself, what can I do to beat Ohio State today? And one thing that you all can do to beat Ohio State today is subscribe to Michigan Football, the voice of college football. And of course, share this with a friend. We are going to be having a panel today, so I may not be able to get to your comments. Please send a super chat. That is the one way to guarantee that your comment or question is read on screen, by sending a super chat of any amount. Just find it in your couch cushions and bring it all in, so that we can keep the show rolling. But I'm not going to waste any more time, and I'm going to bring out our guests today, starting off with Tanner, who's back with us for another week. Tanner, go blue.
Hey, John. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Always good to see you stop by, and we do have a special guest today. Some of you who are avid voice of college football community members know him very well. Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports is stopping by. Hey, Jeffrey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. I really appreciate you for having me on, and hopefully we got a game on Saturday.
That's right, folks. And Jeffrey is here to give the Indiana perspective. Every week we've been having media guests we've had Rutgers Wire, we've had Minnesota people. Every week we get people to give their perspective on the school. And today Jeffrey's here to kind of help us break down the Michigan versus Indiana game. And Jeffrey, I'm going to let you kind of attack it from the different angles, offense, defense. But the first thing I'm curious about is this QB decision. Because obviously what we saw is that Taven Jackson had gotten pulled, right? And so they put in Brendan Sorsby. So I guess my first question before we kind of go, I'm very curious about that. Because we've had our own quarterback drama in the past. So we've been there right where you are now, Jeffrey. So what's your thoughts there on kind of what Coach Allen might be up to?
Well, I mean, he really struggled in the Maryland game, but I think a big, reason why Taven Jackson had been struggling the last couple of games is because the play calling was terrible. You look at the Louisville game in the second half, Taven Jackson had his best performance by far. He threw a couple touchdown passes, and it looked like for sure he was the guy. But then last couple games, the play calling was so vanilla, and, they were just doing so predictable plays, and he was making mistakes. I mean, I don't really think many quarterbacks would have success in that offense. So we got pulled, and Brendan Sorsby was doing a bit better late in the Maryland game. But, I mean, Maryland had backups in. So I don't really think that, what Brendan Sorsby did can really say that he's over Taven Jackson. But it was announced the other day, I think on Monday actually, that Taven Jackson will be the starting quarterback for this game. So he has been reinstated as the starter. I don't even know for sure if he ever really lost the job. He just got pulled in the game. But Tom Allen has said that Taven Jackson will start against Michigan. And I still think Dexter Williams is a wild card. He's still out injured, but once he gets healthy later this month, he could, be the starting quarterback. But for now, it's going to be Taven Jackson against Michigan.
Got it. So I guess, Tanner, have you been kind of following this saga a little bit? I know you like to dig into the teams before the game.
No, truthfully, I have not paid too much attention to Indiana football this year. I am pretty I don't know. I haven't looked at them too much. I know they played Louisville tight. They played the Buckeyes a little tight too in week 1.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking, you can't look at the transitive property. We know that doesn't really work out, but I do think you can kind of pick up on some things. And what I found was interesting with Indiana was they seemed to play pretty good defensively against Ohio State in the first week of the season. Now, obviously, Kyle McCord first game as a starter, but it's interesting to see how well they played in that game. Lost 23-3, but then to see Talia Tagovailoa just light them up in their last outing. I'm curious. I don't know if I'm trying to make an angle here, if I'm trying to push a narrative, but I do think it's interesting looking at Indiana. But they're bad. They're not good. And looking at the advanced metrics, I'm a big believer in the SP plus equation from Bill Connolly over at ESPN. I've always been a big fan of that. I think it's really, really strong when you look at its odds against the spread. I think that model has Michigan 44-7 on Saturday. So, with how Michigan has just been dismantling the rest of the Big Ten games that they've played, I don't know if the quarterback really makes a difference. I don't know if Walt Bell getting fired really makes a difference. I don't know if Justin Fuente coming on as an offensive analyst makes much of a difference here. So, I don't know. It's kind of sad to see how the wheels have really fallen off with the last couple of years under Tom Allen, because I don't like Indiana basketball, but same thing with Duke football, right? You don't like the basketball program, but the football team, you kind of want to see do, somewhat well. And they've just been brutally bad ever since their really solid COVID season. So I don't know, man. I don't know how competitive it's going to be. I don't know if the quarterback really makes that much of a difference.
Yeah, I don't blame you for thinking that way. And honestly, not paying attention to Indiana. Why would you? Ever since 2020, they've been bad. It's reaching Jerry DiNardo level of struggles for Indiana. It's rough. So I think that, like you said, whoever plays at quarterback's not really going to help. But Rod Carey, I think the biggest thing for Indiana, having Rod Carey now offensive coordinator, he was Northern Illinois' coach and Temple's coach, but he had better success in Northern Illinois, is just for Indiana to be more competitive than they've been the last couple of games. If they show that, then maybe that will be looking better for the future in the season and beyond.
So just looking at kind of Indiana, so that we know what we're about to watch. From the offense and defense perspective, I'd love to just understand a little, who are some of the impact players that you've seen on both sides of the ball?
I think that, when you talk about what Tanner said, that Indiana's defense looked really good early on against Ohio State, and Louisville last couple games hasn't been as good. I think part of that's just the offense has been so bad that they've been on the field too long. But Aaron Casey, I think, is a legitimate NFL player. He's a really good linebacker, which that's the one position, as inconsistent as Indiana is all over the field. That's the one position, middle linebacker, that they've had really good players for the last few years. Cam Jones, Micah McFadden, now you've got Aaron Casey. All those guys have been really solid. So I think he's the best defensive player by far. I don't know how much he's going to be able to do with Michigan's offensive line, if he's going to be able to have an impact in the backfield or not, but he is a really good tackler. So he usually, whenever a running back, gets downfield, he stops it for no more than 5 or 6 yards. In the back end, Indiana is very young, but they've had, some success with Nicholas Toomer, Kobe Minor. I think that they are, solid players that are going to get better, but I do think that Michigan's receivers are better than, what the corners in Indiana has been able to try to slow them down. But I think that they're solid. On the offensive side of the ball, Jalen Lucas is a fantastic player, but he's being misused. Early on, they were throwing the ball to him against Louisville and against Indiana State. But then the last 2 games, they're just trying to run him up the middle. He's 5'9", 160. It doesn't work. You can't run him up the middle in the Big Ten. So if Rod Carey can get him utilized in this game, in the passing game, I think that would help. Cam Camper's a really good receiver, possibly an NFL talent. Same with Jalen Lucas. I think these guys are going to leave, though, Indiana, if they're not being utilized to their best of their abilities, to get to the NFL. And then obviously Taven Jackson, he has to play well. If for Indiana to have any shot in this game, he's going to have to play really well.
So would you say that would be kind of I've asked this of everybody, and we try to take it seriously, right? We really, really do. If Michigan falls asleep, and it's happened. Okay. We can all joke about it. Indiana won in 2020. Okay. And Michigan has fallen asleep on teams before and has lost games. So what would need to be there, for Indiana to pull off the miracle?
I mean, it's a great question. I'm trying to legitimately think if their defense needs to be better or if the offense needs to be better. I would almost just say the offense, because I think Michigan, even if they play sluggish in this game, they're going to score. Because Indiana's defense it's not horrible, but I think no matter what, Michigan's going to score 35, 40 points in the game. If Indiana's going to have any shot of winning, their offense has to be perfect. No turnovers. Taven Jackson throwing for almost like 400 yards and probably 4 touchdowns. Like that's the recipe for success. It's not impossible, but it's highly doubtful with Michigan's defensive front. But yes, that's the key. Indiana's offense has to put up points, something that they did not do against Maryland.
And then Tanner, from the Michigan side, obviously, what would need to be there to obviously ensure what most people think is going to be a Michigan victory, but what do we need to avoid? Let me ask it that way. What do we need to avoid to make sure that Michigan does pull out the expected win here?
I would say a flat tire on the buses heading into the stadium.
That's
coming from the hotels they stay at. No, I mean, I think for Michigan, it's continuing to play clean football. We talked about against Nebraska, 0 penalties, 0 turnovers. Against Minnesota, 0 turnovers, 1 penalty. I believe that was late in the game as well, which it was kind of a bad call on Max Bredesen, unfortunately, but it was in the fourth quarter. Game's over. I think Michigan just needs to continue to come out with the same intensity they have, especially on the last 2 road games. I always look at road games as a way to kind of recollect and regather and just go about your business, right? I mean, the term business trip is very cliche and very overused, but I do think there's some truth to it. And the fact that you're not on campus, you're not getting patted on the back everywhere you go. You're getting on a bus, you're getting on a plane, you're going to a, kind of hostile environment. The Nebraska environment was pretty hostile for like 5 minutes. But you're doing it at home. Obviously the home crowd, I mean, I'm hoping I'm going to be there. I'm hoping we're going to be ready to go, fired up. But, it's tough when you're playing a string of less than ideal competition. So, but when I look at Indiana, man, I just can't get over the fact that they got outgained so badly by Akron in a game that Akron definitely should have won. They were held under 300 yards, and Akron had like 470 plus of total offense. So I look at it and it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, unless Michigan just completely self-implodes, they're just so focused, and they're playing some of the best football that I've seen a Michigan team play in my lifetime. And you can say they're not playing anybody, but guess what? You still got to go play the games. And I would be hard-pressed to see another team go and do to this schedule what Michigan has done thus far, right? Maybe your Georgias, maybe a couple other teams. But, like, these performances are, I don't want to say historic, but, like, they're downright dominant. And so I think Michigan is on a mission. It's a team full of guys that want to get back to where they were last year, and they want to go a step further, and they want to get to the national championship, and they want to win the whole thing. So, I've seen a lot of Michigan teams in my time slip up, maybe lose focus, overlook teams. I just think with the guys like J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, like all these guys, and I could name 50 of them, but all these guys have one thing in mind, and that's running the table and going undefeated. I don't see any way that they slip up against, honestly, any of their games until November. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and then it becomes it goes from marshmallow cream puff to meat grinder in the final 3 games. So I know everybody's been giving Michigan crap about the schedule, and look, rightfully so. Ward Manuel, in my opinion, should be fired. I've said this on the show quite a few times. I think that the UCLA cancellation was it sucked for everybody involved, except obviously when you have a softer schedule, it's easier to get to the playoffs, and I understand that that's how the game is played, etc. Mm-hmm. However, I'm excited to get back to playing a Texas type next year for ratings, for exposure for the schools, and everything else. So before we move on, we of course always like to get the predictions, from everybody on how we, we did have Michael Wheatley wins the award. So our Maryland fan who's in chat, let me find it. So congratulations to Michael Wheatley for correctly predicting the correct score of the Michigan-Minnesota game. And you know, I was rooting on your Terps, man. I really was, and I was enjoying that first half. And I was hoping it would keep going into the second half. Yeah, but you guys actually look pretty decent. So congrats on the prediction there. But I'm going to ask everybody here, and we'll start with Tanner. Predictions on Michigan, Indiana.
Man, put me on the spot. You know, I wasn't here last week. I don't know if I actually made a prediction for the Minnesota game. I don't know if I would have been as close. I said 38-6 for Nebraska, though, which was not bad. You know, 45-7. We were close. Give me 52-6, Michigan.
Wow.
They've started to finally get to our predictions earlier, John. Earlier in the season, we were like 49-0, 55, and they were just like, no, we're not scoring more than 30.
We're just going to keep the train from derailing.
And now they're just pouring it on. So now I've got to get back. I was adjusting my predictions to like 38-6. Now I'm like, all right, let's let the big dogs hunt.
Let's ramp it up. Jeffrey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think to Tanner's point when he said the way Michigan's playing and how a lot of people think that they might be the best team in college football. That's obviously premature, but that's my thing as well. When I look at Michigan, they're way better than they were 3 years ago. Granted, Indiana was way better when they won in 2020 as well, but Michigan was not as good of a football team 3 years ago. They've improved tremendously on both sides of the ball. They've got more depth. They've got more talent, and Indiana is a lot worse. They've made moves, getting Justin Fuente as an analyst, Rod Carey offensive coordinator, and someone in the comment section did mention two guys with several interceptions for Indiana, Philip Dunham, and they have another guy as well that's done it. So I think that Indiana, their defense might make it slightly close early on, especially if Michigan is sluggish. But I'm going to go with Michigan to blow it out in the second half and win 42-14. But I do think Indiana will cover. I think Indiana will cover.
It's a huge line. I mean, 34.5. Is a big number.
42-14 is 28. I'm trying to give Indiana something.
I appreciate. I mean, you gotta, right? I've got it 56-3. And I was closer with my Nebraska prediction than I was with my Minnesota. I think that Jason also got it pretty close. Moose got it pretty close as well. But congrats to Michael on nailing it. So before we move on, obviously we have a couple of sponsors. We got Ticketsmarter.com. You're getting your tickets. There's games coming up, and there's concerts, and there's all kinds of things you could purchase. You can go to Ticketsmarter.com, promo code BIG for $10 off a purchase of at least $100, BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of at least $300. It is football season, so get your Voice of College Football merch, and we have a bunch of tremendous products for the entire family, friends, neighbors, uncles, aunts, you name it, including Michigan merch. So we've got the T-shirt apparently is the best seller. And we know that Mike Fort got the T-shirt, but we also have pint glasses and mugs and hoodies for the Michigan gear. And then, of course, your main Voice of College Football as well. I do have the coffee mug. I have the T-shirt. There's also swimming trunks and aprons, and you name it. We got stuff for everybody here. So if you don't mind just popping by the merch store and checking it out, if nothing else, maybe there's something that you might want to get. It is free shipping now, and when you get multiple items, you get a discount. So there's that.
To help with your promo, John, I did get the keychain actually as well. I got the keychain. So
there it is.
It's a fantastic keychain, guys. You got to get it.
Jeffrey's repping the keychain. I love it. And then my last one is if you would consider joining either the Patreon or YouTube membership. Patreon starts at $5 and YouTube membership starts at $2.99. And what do you get with that? Well, you get emojis, you get Mark's betting guide with a bunch of media members, including his under the radar picks. You get access to our 24/7, 365 Discord chat, which Jeffrey and I like to hang out in there. And we have all kinds of good football discussions. There's watch parties that we'll do exclusively for Patreon and YouTube members. We'll do film review from like previous games. So we broke down a few. Like right before the season, we did the 2019 Ohio State Clemson playoff game, which was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. I got to be just have the popcorn and watch the Ohio State and the Clemson people argue about ref calls and everything else. So it's fun stuff. So check it out, and there we go. And we get to our main topic now. And if anybody's seen the movie Rounders, the poker movie, and he says, pay the man his money. So we've heard from multiple sources. John U. Bacon talked about it, that he was talking with people high up in the organization. We heard it from Sports Illustrated. We've heard it around that it is reported that Jim Harbaugh is going to become the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. He said he was asked about this, and it's like any job and anywhere, you want to be somewhere you're wanted. Bosses like what you do, how you do it, and then they tell you that, and that gets reflected in a contract. So Tanner, I'm going to start with you, obviously, as the Michigan expert here. What was taking so long, and it sounds like this is finally going to get resolved in the next few days.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Really glad it is, though, because I'm truthfully really tired of talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to, right? I mean, we had a show, Justin and I from Blue by 90 did a show where we're not the producers on, and they're like, hey, we want you to talk about this. I'm like, Michigan is 6-0. They just smoked Minnesota. And we're halfway through the regular season of what is one of the best Michigan teams that I've ever seen. Granted, I'm only 28 years old, but I don't want to talk about contracts and politics, and it's just like, just get it done with. But on the, that's kind of me being a little pissy. But like on the bright side about this, it seemed, hey, if he's signing a new contract in October, like it seems like he's here now for the rest of his career, right? Like there's no way that he would sign it and then immediately jump to the NFL.
Right. Nope.
So this could be a really great way to combat a lot of the negative recruiting that happens on the trail, a lot of the negative press that comes around this area every single January after the playoffs of like, will he, won't he? So like the Brett Favre saga almost, right? It's like, okay, come on. So yeah, I mean, he deserves to be paid as the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. There's no reason that, I know there's obviously a lot of stuff has happened with Michigan State, Mel Tucker, but like there was no reason, even without all that stuff, right? I'm just talking purely from a number standpoint. There was never a reason that he should have been making more money than Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is a extremely accomplished football coach, one of the probably top 10 most accomplished coaches in America at the moment when you take his whole body of work. So yeah, he absolutely deserves it, and let's move on with it. And I saw that, I think Ward Manuel told the Detroit News via Angelique Chengelis, who is a beat writer covering Michigan, that they'd like to get that done sooner than later. Obviously, we saw what John U. Bacon said, who is as well connected as anybody in this industry when it comes to Michigan athletics. So all signs point towards this is getting done. And I truthfully would love to see it get signed November 25th, 26th this year, maybe at 3:30. I don't know. Just release it then. That would be awesome. Just cap off a 12-0 season with a huge, huge contract and just let the good times roll. That's what I would do.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, what's your take on it?
I mean, to be honest, I think the only reason that it took as long as it did is because I remember about 3 years ago, specifically after, the Indiana loss, because how can any top Big Ten team lose to Indiana? There was a lot of talk with Jim Harbaugh. Fans were not happy. He hadn't beaten Ohio State and all that. Now that he's done all that, he's beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row, and Michigan's rolling and looking potentially like a top 3 team in college football at worst. Now that you're seeing all of that, now they're going to pay him. I think that you can make an argument that it should have been done like in this offseason. not right now where all this stuff's coming out now in the middle of the season. But I think that's why it took so long, because there was a lot of people that were not necessarily happy with what Jim Harbaugh was doing. He wasn't winning enough. He wasn't winning enough big games, specifically against Ohio State. Now that he's doing it, he deserves to get paid.
Absolutely. And look, I was one of the people, and I'm getting people in chat saying, hey, they're all these idiots that always say, well, he's going to the NFL. I mean, I was one of the people, and I'll admit this. A few months ago, we did an episode called The Last Dance, where we talked about the possibility that Jim Harbaugh leaves, or at the very least that, a lot of the offense is going to leave. Mm-hmm. And this needs to be the year to go all the way, win the national championship. I think that this is fantastic. I think that it shouldn't have involved the president of the university getting involved. I think that was a colossal failure on the part of Ward Manuel. And there's clearly some type of tension going on between Ward Manuel and Jim Harbaugh. I don't understand why at this point. I get it in 2020. I don't get it now. And I haven't gotten it for the last year or two. Once he beat Ohio State, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Like, pay him but especially after 2 Ohio State wins, 2 Big Ten championships, and 78% returning production this year, you got to keep that talent. And he was able to keep all this talent from going to the NFL, because there are quite a few folks who could be playing on Sundays right now, and they're here at Michigan instead, thanks to the One More Year Fund and thanks to these initiatives that are coming in. So obviously Harbaugh has changed his culture from 2020. Aiden Hutchinson talked about it. We've seen Aiden Hutchinson absolutely tear it up at the Lions, but he was talking about it, that it became more of a player-driven culture. Right. And he allowed the players to have more say and kind of a little bit more leadership in the team. And that seemed to be paying dividends starting in 2021. Tanner, I'm sure you probably looked at that too, but obviously he had some great years early on and overcame it. I think he overshot expectations in his first year. But then, obviously we had Don Brown, we had things kind of shaky in there. But it sounded like it became more of a player-led culture, and that really helped things. I mean, what have you been hearing on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm very connected, but I do know people. And I think, some of the stories I've heard from, 2019, 2020 into 2021, they got rid of a lot of the bad eggs within the locker room. Mm-hmm. And I 100% agree. I think this has become a player-dominated culture. And, one of the things that when I look at football programs and the really great ones, coaches don't have to get on you to do things. The players get on you to hold each other accountable and put that extra work in. And, to your last dance comment, though, I sort of agree, but not in the sense that it'll never happen again, but in the sense of this group of guys who is my favorite group. And, it started with Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo and a lot of the guys that aren't here anymore. But it's like this group of guys' last chance to go and win a national championship, right? Because J.J. McCarthy's going to the NFL. Blake Corum's gone. Donovan Edwards is gone. Keegan, Zinter, C.J. Roman, the defensive guys. We got some guys coming back, but, Rod Moore's probably going to the NFL. Junior Colson's probably going to the NFL. Yep. Chris Jenkins is gone, right? It's all just come together almost perfectly with how the college football landscape is shaping up and how dominant Michigan looks. So kind of off topic, but I do agree in the sense that this is that last dance for this group of guys, right? Whenever we get a house and we have a basement and I have jerseys framed, it's going to be Corum, it's going to be McCarthy, and it's going to be Hutchinson.
Yep.
Right. Because those are the guys that truly changed this program for the better. Hutch was there. He was there 4 years and his junior year he gets hurt and it's COVID and it's weird, but his senior year, the guy was a monster and he really helped change it. Not overnight. It took some time, but he was a part of that. And then Corum and McCarthy took it and ran with it. And all the guys here, it truly is that last dance feel of hey, these guys aren't going to be here anymore, right? You can still win a national championship in the future, but for this group, 2023 is the year.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeffrey, you follow a lot of teams, and you look at the kind of the cultures, because in addition to Indiana, you also follow Bama, right? And so obviously you've looked at what Nick Saban has done, in instilling that culture, and obviously that's a very different mentality, but like each program has their culture that works for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just how Michigan was able to build up from where they were, 3 or 4 years ago. It's the same thing with Penn State to a lesser extent. Penn State was struggling, and James Franklin was on the hot seat, and he's rebounded from that. Obviously, he's got to beat Ohio State and Michigan if, they're really going to be happy, the Penn State fans, with James Franklin. But he's rebounded from 2020 as well. And same with Harbaugh. And like you said, with Hutchinson and Ajabo, those guys, they made Michigan better. It was the first step. And now you've reached the peak. Michigan, the way that this team looks, it's a national championship type of team. They have the chance to do it. And obviously, you just can't let it go to waste when a lot of these guys are not going to be there anymore. And it's going to be very tough to replace those guys off the bat. Now, Michigan in the future could, be able to get a lot of talent as well and be able to have another team that could win a title. But this year's team, the culture, the talent, everything, the coaching staff is coming together to give Michigan a legitimate chance. And even if Ohio State fans don't want to admit it, they don't. But Michigan has a legitimate shot to win a title, and they might actually have the better overall team all around than Ohio State. That's debatable. We'll have to see more from them. But Michigan, Jim Harbaugh's done a fantastic job with the culture, building that team. And like you said with Alabama, when you have a lot of guys moving around, coaches, players, it's tough to do. But Harbaugh has shown that at least this year he's been able to do it so far.
Tanner, I'll let you add to your comments based on what you said in chat.
Well, yeah, I forgot Mikey Samerslow is one of my favorite players to ever come through Ann Arbor. So that's my bad. Actually, I don't want to say, I don't know if it's that debatable right now. Like, I don't know if it's that debatable that Michigan's better than Ohio State. Like, there's still 6 games to go, but that's just showing how much this program has changed to where 2 years ago this time, Michigan's undefeated at this point. They had just beat Nebraska. I was at that game. That's why I know the date. And it's like, okay, you go into Lincoln. Like, that's nice. And now 2 weeks ago, obviously different program. They had fired Scott Frost and made a change, but like you go into Lincoln and you demolish them. It's not even close. And then you go to Minnesota, a place where I was at the game in 2015 in Harbaugh's first year, where they had to have a goal line stand to win that game. Obviously, that's 8 years ago, has no bearing on any of the teams, but just the fact that you go into a place that sometimes playing at night at Minnesota ain't the easiest thing to do in the world. That's one of the more, that's a tough environment. And you go in there, second play of the game, pick 6, and it's over. And I'm seeing this Michigan team, man. I feel like I'm a broken record because I come on these shows and I'm like, this is the best team that I've seen. And they have, look, somebody made the point earlier. Yeah. And I said earlier too. Yeah. They haven't played anybody on paper that's, that good. I mean, UNLV's 4-1, Nebraska, I think Nebraska, Minnesota are okay. Big Ten West teams. I think actually both will get to a bowl. Hot take. But the way they're just they're not getting 80-yard touchdowns and just, having one guy go off. Like, it's a full team effort. You've got all 3 running backs playing well. You've got multiple receivers, multiple tight ends. The offensive line's gelling. I mean, everybody on defense is making a play. The special teams, I mean, Tommy Doman doesn't punt a lot, but he might be the best punter in their country. This team it's I don't know. I don't want to get hyperbolic, but it's almost hard not to when I'm thinking about how good they are. And I'm always been an optimist, but I always try to be a realist and not get too ahead of myself. But I wanted to bring a stat up because if you look at last year through their first 3 Big Ten games, they were plus 41 in scoring margin. They're plus 104 this year. The only year in the Jim Harbaugh era that was a higher scoring difference was 2016, which included a 78-0 win over Rutgers. Like, this Michigan team is doing things that no Michigan team has done in a very long time. It's unbelievable how good they look and how much like I said this on one of our podcasts earlier today that we recorded. Every time I feel like I have a concern about the team, like against Nebraska, I was like, oh man, the corner's getting beat on slants, looking a little shaky. And then they go get 2 pick sixes and the dude can't even complete a pass in the second half. JJ throws a couple picks and he hasn't had one since. It's just like every time I feel some sort of slight concern, it's like they speak to me and they're like, it's okay. We got you. It's going to be all right. Like, this team is just answering the bell And they, again, I can't wait for the Penn State game. Man, I'm so sick of hearing about Michigan hasn't played anybody. We know it's okay, but they're beating the shit out of everybody. Like, I can't wait to go to Happy Valley because I think Michigan's going to, I don't want to get myself, John. I'm getting myself fired up, man. But I
know you are, and I know what you're going to say, and I'm with you.
This team is different. Like, where was the Penn State guy that was telling me how good they were? And then I saw they were tied at half against Northwestern and then had to run a needle to cover the damn spread. Come on now. This Michigan ain't doing that. Michigan is dominating from the kickoff all the way to the end.
You're getting a lot of love in chat here from
that was from the heart, man. That was from the heart.
That's
how I do it.
Moose, all of our regulars are loving it, and I love it, and it's great. It's good to see you fired up, because this is a special team, right? It is, and you know what you look at, and we go back and watch. Feel free, everybody here. Because Dre Artis and I do a post-game show every Saturday after the game, and we kind of broke down some of the plays and what we saw. But what I think is also notable, in addition to the talent and the experience on the team, right? Because there's a difference between a 5-star 19-year-old right guard and then Zach Zinner, 5 years in, maybe was a 4-star out of high school, but now. I would say if he was restarred, he would be a 5-star right now based on what he's doing. You know, it's really kind of just very, very special. And I looked at some of the plays, and so you know, we'll get to the JJ one in a minute, but like you have to have a good play caller too to bring all this talent together. And kicking Matt Weiss out was probably one of the best things we ever did. Because what we've seen, and Tanner, we've talked about this on the show, but we've seen a more unified approach now of play calling. Joel Klatt talked about it last year. You know, there was this, you know, showing your Tuesday homework on Saturday, and you had to show how smart you were, and there was a lot of disjointed feel last year. And then this year, you know, they're actually setting stuff up, right? The flea flickers are working. Because you're setting things up, you know, and there's a rhythm to it. And we'll get to the JJ, which I think was a really remarkable one. But you know, in order for a team to be special, and you know, and yes, our blue chip ratio isn't as high as Georgia, Alabama, whatever. But guess what? There are 3 teams since 2010 that have a lower blue chip ratio than Michigan. And what do they all have in common? They all had sensational quarterback play. And Jim Harbaugh was just saying a few days ago, I think and this is from Jim Harbaugh, and he knows his quarterbacking. Okay, there's one thing no one can argue that he knows is his quarterbacking. And he said, I think JJ is the best quarterback in the country. I really do. So Tanner, with a 93.6 QBR, you know, people can say ain't played nobody all they want. That's a very high QBR, and it's number 1 in the country. What have you seen from the growth of JJ this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think about his touchdown to Colson Loveland on Saturday. He noticed, I don't know if it was the safety or the corner, but there was a blitz coming off the left edge, and he called it out immediately and told Blake Corum, like, hey, go chip this dude. Gave him just enough time to throw a great pass to Colson Loveland for 6. I think his pocket presence is incredible. I think he, you know, last year there were times where he would roll out and he'd do the Devin Gardner thing where you spin around. He did that against Maryland, and I, you know, was gonna. I don't know what was gonna happen to me, but it wasn't gonna be good. I was freaking out. I was like, okay, let's settle down. Let's, you know, keep your eyes downfield, and if you feel the pocket pressure, just get up and run. And he's done that so well this year. I think about, you know, he's done a really good job of knowing when to throw the ball, but also knowing when to tuck it and run. And I think he's got, I mean, gosh, you know, it seems like their primary pass play is a dig route, like a 15, 20-yard dig route. Like, you don't let college quarterbacks throw over the middle that much, right? Because there's a lot of people there. It's very dangerous, but he just throws them. It's like their go-to pass. Yeah. You know, I think he's done a really, really good job of just the command. Like, he just knows where his guys need to be. I love the play where he threw it to AJ Barner, where he knew Barner was going to be to the left side of the field. He's pointing like he's telling his whoever was out there.
That was what I was going to talk about. Yes.
And then he comes back and it gets 8 yards. Yeah, I mean, he's just played really smart football. I think we already knew, but it's really been solidified that Bowling Green game was truly an anomaly. Yeah. And I think the thing that gets me frustrated too is that JJ McCarthy is 5th in the country in yards per attempt, but he's only thrown it 125 times. The guys at the top of that leaderboard with the passing yards, Penix and Williams, have thrown it like almost 200 times, right? And maybe they've got 0.5 yards more per attempt. It's like, if
and Michigan they stay in the fourth quarter.
Exactly, because USC doesn't have a defense and they have to.
Right, they have to.
If Michigan threw the ball 10 times more per game, I mean, this kid's in the Heisman conversation, and I think he should be.
Jeffrey.
I mean, I think what you guys are talking about with J.J. McCarthy is validated. I mean, number one QBR in the country is really good, and he hasn't played, the entire game, and he's not throwing as many passes. So all that's fair. I will say that someone did say in chat earlier, let's not underestimate our opponents. I want to see Michigan continue to play like this, just continue to dominate, because I know Miami's
got the stormtrooper up there.
I know that Miami's not on Michigan's level, but I was just blown away how Miami was playing, and then they trip up. Michigan obviously is way better, but that's the key. If they continue to do this just week in and week out, like destroy Indiana, destroy the next few opponents, beat Penn State, beat Ohio State, and look really good doing it, then yes, everyone's going to be believing in Michigan. You're not going to have that, though, with the entire country until that happens, unfortunately. Michigan fans, they're already balled in. Jim Harbaugh's balled in with the way J.J. McCarthy's playing. And I think he deserves a lot more attention than he's getting. But unfortunately, since the stats aren't there, everyone's looking at Penix and Williams and what they're doing, the yards and all that. But like you said, they're playing the entire game. I mean, Kalel Williams is having to bail out USC game in and game out against lesser opponents.
Absolutely.
Michigan, I mean, they're rolling out there and just destroying teams at half. And then McCarthy's just taking a break and a breather for the whole fourth quarter and part of the third. I mean, that's a luxury right there. I mean, Kalel Williams would love to be doing that.
Well, I was reading, I don't have it up now, but I was reading he had like a minor thing that he was nursing. And so to be able to come out in the fourth quarter and just like let the backups go, he said he doesn't mind that at all, because he can rest. So he's not chasing stats and stat padding like some teams are doing.
And I will say, though, I mean, look, you're not going to hear different from me. Like, Williams and Penix are studs. Like,
100%.
So, but they just get more of an opportunity to sling the rock and add to those stats. And, look, it's a stat-driven award, but I think JJ is very clearly first team All Big Ten. I think you can make a case that he's an All-American, even if he doesn't have the gaudy stats that some of these other guys have. So,
yeah, you definitely can tell how a quarterback's better, though, when he's on a better team. I'll say it all the time with Penix. I knew he was good at Indiana. And a lot of people were like, oh, he's injury prone because he kept getting hurt at IU. He's not going to make it. He goes to Washington, Kalen DeBoer, and he's lighting it up. So, again, talent around you helps. And McCarthy's got a really good team around him, but he's still doing a good job.
Before we get to the community comments, there's one thing that I talked about on the post game that I want to get your takes on, and especially Tanner, which was about Blake Corum producing and doing what he always does. He punches into work. He gets you, somewhere between 60 and 120 yards, a touchdown. He's good for. He's punching his card, right? But Kalel Mullings, when I saw him come out in game 1 this year, I was kind of surprised, that he came out as, he's been utilized so much, and it seems like that Mike Hart has really been working on him, because he's almost becoming running back 2 with Donovan Edwards at this point, which I'll tell you what, out of all of the takes that I did not have, that was right up there on the list. Kalel Mullings being up there with Donovan Edwards. Tanner, what do you think about Kalel just like taking a step up this year?
I mean, it's been really impressive. I think he gives you another short yardage back. one of the things that we talked a lot about coming into this season was keeping Blake Corum fresh. And I think Blake has looked really, really good. I mean, I think last year he was so good. I don't know if he's at that level quite yet. I'm hoping that he will get there coming off the surgery over the offseason. But if you look at Kalel Mullings and he did not play. He played versus ECU and UNLV, so the first 2 games of the year, did not play against Bowling Green. But in the last 3 games in the Big Ten, he's ran 6 carries for 40 yards, 5 for 43, and 8 for 47. So he's averaging well over 6 yards a carry in Big Ten play. He's another big bruising back, but man, he's got some burst. Like there was a 3rd and 4 against Minnesota down inside the red zone that they gave to him. He was patient, he jump cut, and he accelerated down to the 10-yard line. Like it looked like a guy might be a pro. I think when you look at last year, the necessity they had to play him at linebacker with the lack of depth, with Nakai Hill-Green being out for the entire season and really having nobody behind Colson, having to move Michael Barrett over there and put him into the starting lineup. You were playing Jimmy Rolder, a true freshman last year, for a lot of snaps. Like it made sense that he needed to be there, but I think you're seeing that his natural position was always running back. And he's been playing really well. Yep. He's RB1 next year, 100%, unless he, busts out, goes to the NFL. But he is RB1 next year. And he is a very pleasant surprise to this team that adds another element of depth for them in the run game. And now they have a 3-headed monster. And also the 4th and 1, when he got stuffed on that 3rd and 1, and then they go back to him and they fake it to him and JJ rolls out and throws it to him in the flats.
Yep.
That was a great catch, an athletic move, and he gets up and turns upfield. Like, this kid's showing me something every single week. The burst, I was at Nebraska when he scored his touchdown. Like, the burst he had, kid's a gamer, and he's going to be very vital to this team moving forward because having those 3 running backs. And real quick, Donovan Edwards, I thought played his best game again. I thought he played his best game versus Nebraska, and then I thought he played his best game on Saturday. He was very explosive. I'm starting to see that burst from him that we hadn't seen since the Ohio State game last year and the TCU game and Purdue games. Like, it's starting to feel like he's maybe getting back to closer to 100%. So really great development for Michigan with these running backs. Hopefully they can continue to play well and stay healthy and be there for the stretch run because they're all very important.
Absolutely. And before we move on to we're gonna tackle some comments because we always get fun comments from both the Michigan faithful as well as some of the haters. But what we'll do here is just remind everybody about the shows that are coming up. So Saturdays after the game, I do a post-game show with a longtime Michigan host, Dre Artis, who's able to come on and host that one with me. That's always a great time. We really break down the plays. We look at what we thought was really notable across the board. We also do have Big Ten Live every Monday night from 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And I host the second 2 hours, and we do a block called the Ocho. And so we bring on Voice of College Football Community, and it's every Monday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. It's the Ocho, Voice of College Football. And coming up after this is Oregon Ducks Live, which I think is at 10 straight today. And so they have an Oregon alum coming on to the show. So that should be one. I definitely recommend checking that out. Everybody brings such good guests on. I love watching the other shows in the network and which alum or coach or media person is going to come on that week, because every week it's like it's great. So we try to we try to support everybody else's shows too. So thank you for that. So yeah, we've got let's see, I'm going to go back to, because we have a lot here. I liked this one from Marcus Aurelius Maximus. So I'm guessing a Gladiator watcher potentially. And so this is I think to respond to the Ain't Played Nobody So this is a golf analogy for if either of you play golf. I do not, but I did enjoy watching like Tiger and some of that stuff. So very about as casual a golf watcher as you can get. If you're 20 under par in golf, that sounds like it's a good thing. Does it matter the competition, the wind, the wet grass? You're putting the ball where it needs to be, period. That is consistency and talent.
I can tell you I'd be lucky if I was 20 over par. Yeah, I've never played golf at a consistent level. Be cool though.
I mean, well, when you kind of think about it too, I mean, again, I don't know how much people like math and the equations and the models that people have out there for predicting college football. But again, I really do subscribe to the SP Plus model from Bill Connolly at ESPN, and he's got Michigan #1, and it's opponent adjusted. So, I mean, they're passing the eye test, but they're also with the analytics, like they're doing to their schedule what the #1 team in the country would do to that schedule. Like that's basically what that says. So, I mean, hey, you can only play the teams that are on your schedule, and we're going to find out sooner or later. That's what's great. It's almost like the rankings don't matter at all, but until the end of the year, but then we would have nothing to talk about.
Absolutely. Ralph mentioned 2 other moves. And yeah, I should have, when I said best move they ever made, I meant best that year. Cause you can't, firing Don Brown and then demoting Josh Gaddis were also probably up there. So thank you, Ralph, for contributing that.
Man, Josh Gaddis is an insult to football. And again, I know him and Mike Loxley have had the beef, and of who was calling the plays, who was coming up with the game plan, and now they're working together, which is perfect. But I'm watching that game, just furious, just infuriating game to watch. If you're rooting for the underdog, and obviously I don't want to see Ohio State win. I think it'd be hilarious because I could come on here and have some laughs. But gosh, that's a game they probably should have been up 21-0 in. I mean, unbelievable that went down that way. Yeah,
I'm glad somebody other than me is talking about Josh Gaddis, because I've been accused of panning Josh Gaddis quite a bit. But you're right. I mean, some of the play calling decisions, and it goes back. If you watched any film on Miami offense last year, he was running like 180-pound running backs up the teeth of like Texas A&M's defense.
Hey, that's what I'm saying with Indiana. Jalen Lucas, 5'9", 160 pounds, and Walt Bell's running him up the middle. It doesn't make any sense at all. Put the guy in space.
Ralph mentioning best thing about JJ, he's younger than Kyle McCord. So who has more room to grow? JJ improves every game. And I might point out that, that they took Kyle McCord over JJ, or at least told JJ, oh, well, we're not going to take a quarterback. Oh, but we're going to take Kyle McCord. And then JJ used that as fuel and became Ohio State became his enemy that day.
You know who Notre Dame?
Great for us.
You know whose commitment Notre Dame took before JJ McCarthy had a chance to decide on a college? Tyler Buckner. Yeah. That is true.
That is true. He's a backup at Alabama.
5 of 14 in his last game against USF. So yeah, interesting.
And we and we do have a super questionable recruiting decisions. We do have a 999 super chat from our buddy, faithful viewer, Michigan loyal friend and true Nick. Our Harbaugh and U of M are going to pummel PSU into the ground so bad that, oh boy, that Franklin's wife is going to have to rock his crying ass to sleep at night like the baby he is. That weasel has something coming. Wow, strong word. And normally he goes at Ryan Day, so this is new. This is new territory for Nick. He's branching out.
It's because Michigan's so good now. They're really looking dominant. The confidence is building.
I mean, what James Franklin likes to make sure his assistant coaches have attractive wives to show that they can close, right? That is a true statement. So maybe part of that is making sure they can rock their ass to sleep at night. I don't know.
I think that's out of my discussion league. Right
I don't
there.
know if that's in the contract. Yeah, I don't. Do you know what I'm talking about though? Because James Franklin said this. I'm not making anything up or trying to be smart or funny. Like he said that, and I'm pretty sure it's on video when he was at Vanderbilt. Wild thing to. If he said that today, can you imagine? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, we did get some love from that super chat. Yes, we appreciate any super chats. We'll read them on air as long as they don't, go outside the bounds of what we can say on YouTube without getting pulled down. But I think that one was right on. Nick knows how to get it like right on the the line.
The PG-13 comment.
Yeah. And he knows his football too. I mean, he's been on the Big Ten Live a couple of times. He knows his football. Yes, thank you, Dependent Fanatic, and thank you for always being here and hanging out with us, DF and Moose and all these people who are just who always come in and support the show. It's just so appreciated, and like we actually do like put effort into this. And we bring in guests and we create outlines and so we actually do put effort in. So it means a lot when people do come and they come every week and they support the show. So we really appreciate that. So it's time for final thoughts and where can people find you? And we're going to start with our guest, Jeffrey, final thought for us on Michigan, Indiana, and where can people find you?
Definitely, to answer Dependent Fanatic's question in the chat, he says, any chance at all for Indiana to make a bowl game? Can they beat Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, for example, to get to 6 wins? I don't think that at this point it's more likely than not that it's going to happen. I think that it's less than a 50% chance, but it is still possible because Indiana has a new offensive coordinator. If the play calling can improve starting this week against Michigan, if Indiana can just look competitive slightly in this game, maybe not get blown out by more than the 35-point spread, that maybe will make Hoosier fans, the few that there are, but they do exist out there, they'll be happy and have a shot to possibly beat Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, because all those teams don't look that great. Out of that group, I've never in my life thought I would say out of that group, Rutgers looks the best, because they do. 4-2, Michigan State's not that good. Illinois is struggling really bad right now. Purdue, maybe they'll get better, but I think it is possible Indiana can do it, but probably still less than a 50% chance. But I'm looking forward to the game this week. And like I said, hopefully Indiana can just at least cover. That will make me happy. And you can find me over on my YouTube channel, Only Talk Sports, and over at Twitter at Jeffrey at Only Talk Sports as well. # Only Talk Sports. And I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And we appreciate you being on, man.
Thank you.
Gosh.
Hey, man. Sometimes it happens.
Tanner, your turn. So thanks for coming back, man.
No, of course, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Tanner Wu-Tang, like Wu-Tang Clan. You can find us on Twitter at BlueBy90, BlueBy90.com. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I have an iPhone, so I use Spotify. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us, BlueBy90. I host a show called Blue by the Numbers, where we break down the PFF grades after each Michigan game. Final thoughts, man. I'm ready for some big time football, John. Dude, it feels like we come on here and we have to analyze just really not great football teams, and it's like, I can't wait. Because we know, look, Michigan is going to get to 9-0.
Yep.
I'm just telling you. And they're probably going to be pretty damn dominant. We're going to have the same conversation the next month until Penn State and we get to go to Happy Valley. But I'm just ready for some good football, man. This team is just playing out of this world. Never seen a Michigan team be this dominant, and I'm just ready to see it against some really good teams because I alluded to it earlier, but I'm feeling pretty good about things at the moment.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a pretty solid season. So we look forward to hearing all your thoughts as we get to the final home stretch: Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State. It'll be great football for sure.
And John, real quick, I don't want to pull a Jeffrey and get cut off. The Detroit Lions are 4-1. Let me just throw it out there with the second easiest remaining schedule in the NFL. It's a great time to be a Michigan and Detroit Lions fan. I'll tell you that much.
There you go. Detroit Lions for you. And it's always great to watch Aiden Hutchinson. I'm also kind of becoming a little bit of a 49ers fan because we're seeing, obviously we're seeing Jake Moody. We saw Ronnie Bell, kind of hang out there. And I'm enjoying Kittle and McCaffrey crushing it too. So even though they're not Wolverines, it's still fun. So we like to keep tabs on our Wolverines as they branch out into the NFL.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, John. Thanks again, man.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
All right, y'all. Any final comments here? We got Moose saying go Blue Moose. Really appreciate you guys. Mike is saying he's about to go sub to Jeffrey right now. That's awesome. Jeffrey gave a 2 thumbs up for that, so that's fantastic. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your answer and insight. So yeah, very, very cool. And again, thank you all for being part of this. Yes, please hit the like button on your way out. And once again, in about an hour, we're going to have Oregon Ducks live. So let me pull up that. Looks like it's scheduled for 10:05 with former Oregon wide receiver J.J. Burden. I'm hoping I said that right. J.J. Burden. So Oregon Ducks live at 10:05 p.m. Eastern. So I'm going to ask everybody, at the very least, to hit that link and click the like button over there. If you can make it to the show, just let them know John from the Michigan show sent you, so they can keep a tally on it and they can look and see who came over from Michigan Wolverines live. We like to help each other out, help each other's shows out. Yes, go Blue. And yes, thank you all for coming on. And Moose just followed. Looks like both Tanner and Jeffrey. So this is great. And until next time, y'all, go Blue. See you around.